Testing, testing, one, two, three. Hi, this is Mr. Cologne, Rafael Cologne from Reinforce My Faith, and welcoming you to this initial on this primer on young Catholic adults, young adult Catholics, and their sojourn as they navigate through life with their faith through that specific time in their lives after high school, but before marriage and kids as they start building, they become more, take on more responsibilities, are out in the real world, in a sense, out of their parents' shadow and have to build their own identity. And how do they carry the faith forward in that aspect? And to move forward, I wanted to, it's basically a social experiment based on anecdotal evidence of me having conversations with uh, different kinds of Catholics who are young adults, either they're recent converts or have been lifelong Catholics, but have what are the struggles and their experiences as they navigate through this, through the life, as they, seek either marriage or for some of them, the religious life. This mostly applies to the 90% of Catholics who are wanting to get married as a part of their career and their future plan. And how does life is like with them, and how is the church addressing their needs as young adults? And I want this to be like an initial or a primer, and to make this an ongoing series to talk about young adult issues. Not that it cannot be applicable to other circumstances, but young adult issues in the church and society at large, and try to use some of that experience as I am becoming a middle adult or leaving the young adult part behind, and also talk about my experiences and what have I witnessed from others. And I'm also, in a sense, doing A/B testing to see if this is a good format to disseminate some of this information or one of many. And that makes this a type of experiment. So hopefully you can see the growth here and also contribute to this larger conversation, because that's what it's. I got an engagement and conversation about the ongoing societal issues that affects young adult Catholics. And to set the stage, these slides are really more for me to bounce off and have some prompts to talk about some ideas. And obviously, in the forefront, I want to put that, we believe in the church's teachings and traditions here at Reinforce My Faith, as me as a in person and also as a virtual teacher, amateur theologian. And the issue is the pastoral applications and how to reach a person in their day-to-day, everyday life. As how is this the church's teachings applicable to me, and how can I take the faith and apply it to me? And that's one of the many challenges and one of the questions that the church has to answer, whether it's in the parish level or obviously in the worldwide community. And a different arenas, right? It's going to be different in North America, and it's going to be different even within America in the South or in the Northeast. How can we not only speak on these issues that affect young adults, but also do it in a intelligible and something that they can respond to without coming as both either too preachy or too cringe or too, um, I guess, bubbly and doesn't really have any bearing on their life and their real life significance. And these issues have really emerged as the traditionalists in the Western culture, either because of the Enlightenment, or because of the Industrial Revolution, or because of the post World War II order. Of there was typically infancy and then the stage of toddler, and then being a child, and from the child you were an adult, and that in between period was really really short, as the child was really a young adult, whether it's a male or female. They would follow into either their, usually their parents or somebody in their family or somebody in their community, and they would either take learn lessons as to become an adult. And that's why you saw that a lot of things happen earlier, whether there be uh, not graduating because they decided to take on careers immediately. So they were 16, 17, 18, 19 years old when they met together and got married. So as far as the church dealing with these issues, that was not in the issues until a couple of decades passed. So the stages of both teenager and young adult were not really as separate. So any familial touchstones that the church would have would be really for the infants, for then growing as a child and then maturing as an adult who had kids and responsibilities. So the young adult there portion was really in a transition phase that was not really delved into. And now, since it's its own separate category, as we have structured society, whether it's between schooling and other societal factors, that we have an extended teenagehood, that it's a real period of demarcation there, and also one of uh, a young adult that is post high school, post schooling, but also pre marriage. And we have a long, and in this period becomes even longer as at least in recent times. The church has really been behind in terms of addressing the needs of these individuals and this as a category. So I wanted to set that background to see that this is a newer phenomenon, and how as the church moves slowly, right, as an institution with traditions and its teachings, the pastoral needs were not there because they were not really trained for this. And a lot of the young adult activities were really given to the laity, especially in the wake of the mid 60s and Vatican II after that. And we have lay adults who want to start their own apostolate, right, and have a community with young adults. But there's a lot of different circumstances that are really modern or postmodern problems, whether it's again or not again, but the fact that we're not as rooted as we once were in terms of our community. We move a lot to different places, so we don't stay in the location for that long. We look for the opportunities for schooling, for jobs, trying to establish ourselves. It is hard to stay in a community, even with our virtually. That's still a good, and that people do meet virtually, and that's, I think, becoming more and more common. But I think we're still in the in between stage because people like to see somebody physically and have that physical connection that's intangible. You can't feel, and it's very different. Praying and being in a community where you can receive the sacraments in person and have somebody to talk to and look in their, just have that feeling and that vibe with the other person. Just here to remind me, have this slide here to what is a Catholic young adults, at least for our purposes, is post high school pre marriage Catholics who, by self identification, identify as Catholics. So these are, for the most part, single people who are looking for both, in a sense, marital prospects. That's usually secondary to primarily being career oriented. And so, this career orientation and this marital prospects are two areas or arenas that the church could help address, or those lay volunteers or those who start up young adult groups can help address these issues, as they're what the most pressing. Also, alongside with building communities, having some sort of social structure, um, trying to get a career or apprenticeship, and learning from elders and things of that nature that can help um, Catholics really get in touch and grow into the persons that God called them to be. Because a lot of the issues is that their identity, that also starts in the teenage period, but at young adults, as we having more responsibilities and being out on their own, it's what is their identity? Are they gonna take the faith that the parents gave to them and make it their own? And how can we foster a better relationship with the community and the church, so that they keep coming back, as opposed to just being duty bound by obligation, which is a good starting point, right? But one wants to always grow from there, and not just have do something out of duty and responsibility, but also do it out of love and having admiration. I typically mention that when you hear about commandments or precepts from God, from somebody who's not in a relationship with God, those sounds like harsh um, laws and rules. But if you're in a covenantal relationship with God and a good standing with God, when you hear covenants or things of that nature, they are more, you take it as fatherly advice from your heavenly Father, and that is another opportunity to be in the mind of the church, to be in a church community, so you can understand whether it's the church is teaching better, and just be a part of a social structure that is hopefully getting together to do some good in a, not just spiritually for you, but also in a community as well, since a community factor is something that has been also brought up as I talk to other young adults or people who are older, as they want to do something outside of just the 9 to 5 grind or the side hustle. They want to take care of themselves. They want to eat organic. They want to have a good life, an abundant life, but they also want to matter in the community. And the church also is there for that. But I think it could be a better avenue to use their time, treasure, and talents for them, as opposed to put them in just a catch-all category. Um, I have here a generalized and maybe an unfair characterization of typical young adult events that I have witnessed in the past. Um, these events are better than nothing, but usually it's once a week, if that, and they start with like an opening prayer, lay led, I guess mostly, and then we have a lay led Bible study, which has its difficulties, as you know, as the church has hierarchy and magisterium. About a lot of it's just we read a passage and we say how it feels. There's no actual, again, this is journalization, so maybe it's a bit unfair, but there's no theme and how the church interprets this and how we can apply it to our life. And there's also sometimes also there's like movie times and discussion afterwards, and then there's typically a post event that involves alcohol. I guess that's not a good word in there, post event alcohol, but that's what it's meant there. Since a lot of the young adults are over 21, and that's part of how one builds community, or at least in a normal setting, right? But we want to add not just a cross to it or a Bible to it. We want to have more than that, and just, and alcohol being a something you can just add to it, as if you choose to leave it or not, but make it a more organic part. That being the main purpose of being part of a community of young adults who have this faith in Christ and who want to share that faith, and who are in need of specific needs, in a sense, right? They want, looking for where it's prospects for career advancement, or just need an outlet to refuel their spiritual life, as society itself is used to be indifferent to the faith. Now it seems like it's openly hostile. I think there's the three kingdoms Protestant hypothesis that I read about before the 1970s. It was actually positive to be a Christian. After the 70s, before the 2010s, it was a neutral to be a Christian in terms of career advancement or just social standing, how they look at you. And now, after the 2010s, it is viewed as typically as a negative aspect of you being a Christian who believes what the church or just any denomination who have traditional understanding of the church's teaching, especially when it comes to sexuality, or the pelvic issues, as it's called. And that is something that they want to have some background, some reinforcement, if you will, to have these conversations with each other, to have conversations that matter. Right, that's also a good podcast, conversations that matter, so that they can be better equipped and also just feel refueled. They take time out of their very busy schedules of trying to make a career, a name for themselves, build romantic relationships, to have a spiritual aspect. And how can the church feed them outside of Sunday mass, right, or Saturday or Sunday obligatory mass, right? How can it become a lifestyle or continuing part of that? And the church would be good to have some sort of continuity within the diocese, establish certain parishes, maybe have, whether that's, if they can calculate how many young adults it has, to have like a mandatory allotment for young adults, have some sort of program that has catechetical sound, but also speaks to the young adults, right? Maybe you do want to have like a theology on tap, if you will, with guest speakers who had some sort of experiences. A lot of young adults, especially males, who I've been talking to, and just by anecdotal evidence through Twitter and other platforms, have a lot of issues dealing with sexual purity when it comes to pornography and things of that nature. So how can we, maybe sometimes we have a male only space or a female only space that deals with specific issues, and then issues that we can talk about together in terms of relationship, setting boundaries, setting goals, maybe even a health conscience as proponent. So we have the urgent need for young adult Catholic to engage in the Catholic Church, and this is critical. You want a church to be parishioners, to grow up in the church, to get married, to be buried in the church, and the church should be a part of their natural lives or the life cycle, right? And to do that, the church has to address its needs. It just can't. It's good to be the default option to there when you're married or need a sacrament, but it'll be good to be a part of that community. Even if you move, you still can go and go to mass, and meet people and be more welcoming to those opportunities. There's a way to be both and, right, to keep your traditions, to keep your faith, but also be welcoming and understanding where people are in their faith walk as well. And both similar situation to Jesus inviting over sinners for a meal. It's not just an invitation to have the meal together and they leave as they are. No, there is an implicit and sometimes explicit expectations. They're there not only to break bread, but also to have a different perspective and possibly change their sinful habits. And maybe not in that specific way. Maybe sometimes you do have to be direct in terms of, holding people accountable. I think that's especially prevalent or needed in males, as they tend to have a hierarchical understanding of what their needs and who their elders are and how to live up to certain expectations, even if it's not explicitly or dismissed by modern society. So why the Catholic Church must address young adult disengagement now? It's because if it, even cynically, if it wants to keep its members, right, you want to meet the needs of the individual. You don't have to change your teaching. There's a famous quote: "The deposit of faith is one thing, and the way it's presented is another." I believe that's Pope John the 23rd, and he said this, and I depend the context. Well, the quote itself, I think it's a good quote. I use it when in my classes as a theology teacher, in terms of there's the content in the book, the catechism, in the Bible. When I said book, I meant like the religious textbooks that we use. Not that I want to just dismiss the Bible as just a book, but the Bible, the catechism, and just the textbook, I meant to say. It's one way, but then how do you present and how can it speak to the generation without losing its touch, without losing its main thrust of its message, right? And I think that has to be done whether you're talking to, right, a toddler or a teenager, to a young adult, to an adult. They are to be talked to differently, and they have different wants and needs that can speak to them. Igniting young adult participation in the Catholic Church. So, what are some events that young adults maybe want to participate in? I think a lot of mentorship opportunities can come as well, like especially now as the parish is full of older folk and boomers, as jokingly they're called, and they have a lot of knowledge and expertise they have built up. So maybe they can donate some of their hours or have some sort of mentorship program throughout the church that could explicitly welcome them into the fold and teach them something about life. This have to be, even if they're different, totally different career paths. There's something that could be learned um, from a male mentor if you're a male, or a female mentor if you're a female, or maybe if you switch it up every year. I don't know how that would work, but basically use the resources that the church has. And maybe get some permanent deacons out of there if you're a Novus Ordo, as opposed to transitional deacons, or even priests if that's the calling. Maybe some people don't even know that because of how busy they are going through college, and maybe that's what God is calling them. And going to church and sticking to the sacraments and being at the heart of the church could be a way that they can have that connection and leave that fogginess behind and have that purpose, as we all have a purpose for God that God has given us, and sometimes it is difficult to discover. So it's a journey, right? Life's a journey, and you're learning every day to accept that and integrate that in your life and to grow. So, and lastly, here we have bridging the gap between young adults and the Catholic Church. Again, what circumstances and what activities can the church do? Maybe they want to, maybe we can volunteer with the. We have older mentors that maybe our young selves as young adults can help, even teenagers, because they have been in through that. So what difficulties do they have? What can they learn, and what kind of volunteer opportunities could come out of that? And there are some professional organizations, such as Young Catholic Professionals and some other young adults um, organizations. They're not as they're becoming more common, right? And they're not officially part of the church per se. They're their own apostolate. So I think bigger cities have more of a advantage in this regard, right? But still, I think this should be a parish level thing in terms of if we have enough congregants, so that their needs could be addressed. Ideally, especially now, they want the church should be a refuge where you re-energize before you go out into the world, where you're with like-minded people and you make connections. Sometimes these connections can be lifelong connections, and you can better serve other people and serve yourself as well. That's also an important aspect. That talking to other young adult Catholics, how can they themselves have a clear mind and clear purpose, and love themselves and take self-care in the most positive sense of that word, so they can serve God and serve others as well, because they need to take care of themselves as well. And how can you stand up for their beliefs in the workplace and do it in an appropriate way when you need to, or be bold, but also don't go out and do it in a brash and obnoxious way that turns people off, right? Practice you faith every day, and when need to use words is a famous quote attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. Practice your faith every day through your words, through your works, and when need to use your words. Your words are important; they signify something, but I think that the way you act also says a lot about your character. That having integrity and living your life when no one else is looking except God is something that we should strive for. And I guess I wanted to go back to the original talk here about the sojourn, right? What is a sojourn in the biblical parlance? And that is being a type of lost traveler, a lost soul, kind of has that connotation of finding meaning or finding a community. And sometimes there is a season for us, right? Especially if we're going to college and we don't intend to stay in that town, or a job opportunity that doesn't go well, that or maybe your job gets moved. So there is a type of community and individuals we can build there, and we can still connect if we move through the internet. So we can use whatever these tools that are modern tools that are given to us, use them for good, as they are tools and not inherently bad in of themselves, arguably. So these are my initial preliminary thoughts on navigating life and faith between high school and marriage as a Catholic young adult. I hope to provide more information and maybe have some interviews with individuals who are willing to give some of their quote unquote testimony, or just their point of view as they have been through, as they're going through it now, or maybe they have just reached a point where maybe they're just married, just have kids. So how did they get to that point, or just or maybe just younger, and what are their struggles with, and what do they want from the church, and what can the church provide for them? Maybe I could even get some uh, clergy permission from their superiors or their parish to talk about these issues and get their perspectives, to see what they have been doing that's been successful or not successful, to see how we can better shape this world, this fallen post Genesis 3 world, but also do it in hope, love, and charity. This has been Rafael Colon, Mr. C at reinforcemyfaith.com. Come check that out. Come check out my upcoming videos on this subject and other subjects. We're going to have uh, most likely videos Monday through Friday, Tuesday and Thursdays being live, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday being pre-recorded videos about faith and about subjects that you guys are interested in. And that's why engagement is important. So hopefully we can communicate more, especially in Twitter and in other formats, Facebook and other groups. So you can find me there as Mr. C the Layman. So take care. God bless. Seek the true, the good, and the beautiful.